make a representative of the neighborhood country to make a few comments. As you rightly mentioned, for us, EU is of course an attractive market with its more than 500 million population, and it's also a beacon of stability, security that we, of course, would like to be as closer as possible. But one thing which is very important for us, and why we choose the European integration as our path of development, is that we clearly view European Union and Europe as a set of values that we share. Of course, we as you rightly mentioned also, that we went through different developments. Western Europe differently, our part of Europe differently, and there were issues that we had to deal with till coming to this very moment. But the one thing which is clear for many of our neighborhood countries, that we adhere to that values, and that is what we want to share with you, and that is what makes us closer even. But of course, understanding is that there is a thorny way that we have to go, developments, internal reforms, and which was, for example, for Armenia, we never declared, as also Ambassador Khandogiy said, that we aim to become a member of the European Union, because we understand that it's something that maybe we can address maybe 20, 30 years after. But for us, the most important thing in all these past 20 years since our independence, dealing with the European Union, is that the core of our relationship. We want to profit from this process. That is the most important thing for Armenia, and for our society. We want to take your hand and go through this process. And as it was rightly mentioned, this sometimes, since we witnessed that there were political also decisions sometimes are made driven by political expediency than the real reality on the ground. But when this concept more for more was developed, that was also another kind of encouragement or impetus for us, that we are ready to talk to you, we are ready to go with you, that is, as you were telling, as long as you are ready to hold our hands. So I think this is a very, very realistic approach to, and also remunerating approach for us, and this is exactly how we finally realize that it is, as we are talking on the same with the same language, and more or less on the same level. So you offer, it's take it or leave it. This is our set of the rules, and you are the one. I think we are the ones asking to be closer to you, and that is your set of the rules and the rules of the game. So if we are ready to do that, and we are doing that and getting response from you, so basically, just my couple of comments.
That's a direct offer though to the embassy of Armenia. Immediate thoughts from that.
Well, I know I'm very greatly encouraged by that, because one of the things that the sort of House of Lords, when it looked at enlargement, tended to take the opinion that, or see from its evidence, that really it was all around none of this was worthwhile unless it actually looked like there was going to be membership at the end. I take great encouragement from that if you like, that the role model aspect, to a certain degree of how things work, actually works well, and there can be that comradeship between the European Union and other sovereign states in terms of the European neighbourhood. I think that's a very positive message to come out. Yeah.
Any other questions on the floor? Yes.
Yes, I would like to ask a question about the relations of the European Union with Russia and the Commonwealth countries who are part of Russia, bloc. These relations have been passed through, obviously, the period of the Cold War, and then a political stabilization process in Russia as well. Looking to the future, I think the European Union must think about as well Russia is thinking now to talk with the United States, because at the end of the day, the world peace in Europe, which involve not only Europe, involve neighbors, you're talking about neighbors, will be how Europe is going to think and understanding with the bloc of Russia, which Russia is Europe as well, with a rich culture, civilization, and so on. And that maybe could be done, I think is my modest opinion, if Russia and European Union sit at the table, as last week I think did Mr. Putin and the President of the United States sitting as well to talk about. So you talk about several intentions about, you say that you see a report in the last, whatever it was, I can't remember, but nothing coming from that. I think Russia also is changing as well, because the political crisis situation in the world is going to push Europe, including Russia, to an understanding to keep the world peace and so on. So I think here there are two things to learn. That we are talking about the perfect European Union with democracy, election system and so on, and the other rest of the neighbor who we need to be good students and we need to learn from our master. But the reality is that the other side also could make excellent contribution for this understanding, for a peace and reconciliation, how European in general, European Union is going to connect it with that immense part of the geography of Europe and population, you see. So that is, maybe you can, with your experience, can project something about for 20 or 10 years, or imagine how it could be, you know.
Many thanks. Any panel want to react to that, to the EU's thorny relationship with Russia?
Well, interesting observations. I think it would be a great mistake to assume that the EU as a whole, has one common view about a bilateral partner. The different member states of the EU have different levels of relationships and friendships with other third countries. For example, the German-Russian relationship is a very warm one, and until recently, until last week, the British-Russian relationship was hardly very warm until Mr. Cameron went off and did something quite miraculous in resetting that relationship. So I think it would be a mistake to look at Russia and the EU as two monoliths, particularly in the EU, because I must say, after having observed this process now for nearly 5 years, the idea that there's a common foreign policy after the Lisbon Treaty is a lot of nonsense. Forget the defense thing, but to talk about a common foreign policy, fantasy. But then we in Brussels do fantasize. We live in a sort of fantastical world of hopes and dreams. Reminds me of a story I heard once when Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson went out camping. In the middle of the night, Sherlock Holmes woke up Dr. Watson and said, "Watson, Watson, what do you see?" And Watson said, "I see the great universe, I see the constellations, I see our galaxy and the expanding glory of our creation. I see the stars, the wonder of the Creator's mind." And Holmes turned to Watson and said, "Watson, someone has stolen our tent." And quite frequently I have this unreal feeling sitting in the Parliament of the EU, listening to great speeches from the commissioners, and sort of trying to gently nudge them and say, "Someone has stolen our tent," because the reality and the dream is ever expanding now. The other month I heard a speech by a senior commissioner promising to make the EU the most competitive economy by 2020. Well, that's 7 years' time. I thought, I must pinch myself. So unfortunately, we also got ourselves stuck in our own dream. And the awakening is going to be rather difficult. Because of that, individual countries within the EU have decided to go and play their own game. So they play different games with different partners across the EU boundaries. And there isn't a common anything, really, when it comes to individual member states and how they react to third countries.
If I may, a very brief comment. Certainly, I'm not here to present Russian position, but if to change a bit the classical expression, Russia does not join unions, creates union, if necessary.
Ears will be burning in Brussels, I think. Okay, we've got time probably for one more question. Gentleman there in the yellow tie.
Yes, I'm precisely from the Russian embassy, and I must say this joke exists in the Russian language as well about Sherlock Holmes, which shows we are not so far apart. But to bring the discussion a little bit down to earth, in concrete terms, how do you see Russia-EU and Russia-Ukraine relationship changing, if changing, after this stabilization agreement is signed?
Russia, EU, Russia, Ukraine, EU.
Ukraine, no, I'm interested in Russia-EU relationship and Russia-Ukraine relationship. Do you expect this to change? And
to be very brief, we have never looked at this situation as either or. We are convinced that there is plenty of opportunities for us to develop relations with the European Union as the strategic choice of Ukraine association. By the way, this is now Ukrainian law, and of course we are destined to maintain and we are willing to maintain best of relations with Russian Federation, which is our biggest trade partner, historical ties, family ties, everything. So I would simply want to emphasize that we are not looking at this as we are doing something at the expense of something else. So we can do both very successfully. And we only hope that Russia is also thinking in that way, that our aspirations to become a member of the European Union and at this particular stage to sign association agreement